Hello, my name is Casey Stegeman, and today I'll be discussing Ford Motor Company and a strategic plan. This presentation is for Professor Brandon Schulte's MBA 690 Strategic Management. In this presentation, we will cover the following topics: Ford's company background, Ford's ethics, the SWOT analysis, the Boston Consulting Matrix, key financial data, and recommendations for Ford. Company background. The Ford Motor Company was founded on June 16, 1903. The company was founded by Henry Ford and 12 other investors. The first car was sold on July 15, 1903. In 1908, the Model T was introduced. Parkway of Lexington states, "The Model T was affectionately nicknamed the Tin Lizzie and quickly became the car of the people. Priced at just $850 when introduced, and dropping as low as $260 by the 1920s due to production efficiencies, the Model T was affordable for millions of Americans. Production efficiencies include the assembly line, which allowed the product to transfer to different worker stations. Currently, Ford Motor Company is led by Chief Executive Officer James D. Farley, Jr. Farley has been serving in this position since October 1st, 2020, and previously held the position of Chief Operating Officer. Farley has established a focus on fast-tracking Ford's transformation through operational efficiencies, which benefits the consumers and delivers sustainable profit growth to the shareholders. Ford Motor Company is headquartered in Dearborn, Michigan, and traded on the New York Stock Exchange using the ticker symbol F. According to Ford Motor Company, the company consists of 171,000 employees and operates globally through three customer-centered business segments: Ford Blue, Ford Model E, and Ford Pro. Ford Motor Company's Code of Conduct establishes the factors that create a trusted company. Ford Motor Company states, "We build trust together through our actions and decisions at work each day. Each time we put people first, each time we act with integrity and honesty, always prioritizing humanity." The specific actions and decisions that Ford focuses on include the safety and quality of goods and services, a safe and healthy workplace, managing conflicts of interest and legal requirements, respecting human rights, and creating a healthy environment. Adherence to the code is essential to the growth of the public perception of Ford Motor Company. Unethical, improper, and illegal conduct will not be tolerated at Ford. These actions can harm our company and reputation. Individuals at Ford whose actions violate our code may be disciplined up to and including termination, states Ford Motor Company. Ford has a responsibility to create safe vehicles for consumers. In the 1970s, the Ford Pinto experienced an ethical dilemma. Auburn University's Center for Ethical Organizational Cultures states, "Design issues arose regarding placement of the gas tank behind the rear axle instead of above it. Bolts were added which increased the likelihood of a puncture in the tank and causing a fire. The flawed design cost Ford Motor Company $125 million in compensation and punitive damages. It was eventually found that the company's previous actions had pressured the designers to keep the fault hidden, as bad news commonly resulted in terminations. Therefore, the company was aware of the fault, but did not communicate the defect to management due to fear. In a more recent lawsuit, Ford Motor Company was ordered to pay $2.5 billion in punitive damages following a wrongful death lawsuit involving a fatal rollover crash. The court found Ford liable for 85% of a Ford F-250 Super Duty pickup rollover accident in 2022, which claimed 2 lives. Zach Barreto states, the lawsuit alleged that Ford had been aware of the risk posed by the Super Duty truck roofs since at least 1999. The plaintiffs presented evidence that an internal Ford engineering team had developed a stronger roof design in 2006, but the company opted not to implement it. Instead, Ford lobbied the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to avoid imposing stricter roof strength standards on heavy-duty trucks. The company needs to work to resolve these issues. First, the company needs to alter the communication mapping from designers to management. The employees of the company are afraid to communicate the problems developed during the production cycle of these vehicles. Ford Motor Company should establish a hotline or anonymous messaging system to facilitate reporting of vehicle design issues. Second, management may not want to act upon these concerns. Another recommendation is to implement whistleblower training. Whistleblowers are protected from retaliation. The United States Department of Labor states, an employer cannot retaliate against you for exercising your rights under the Department of Labor's whistleblower protection laws. Retaliation includes such actions as firing or laying off, demoting, denying overtime or promotion, or reducing pay or hours. Therefore, ensuring the safety of employees who have revealed these safety concerns should be essential. The University of Minnesota Libraries Publishing states, SWOT analysis takes an even narrower focus by centering on an individual firm. Specifically, SWOT analysis is a tool that considers a firm's strengths and weaknesses along with the opportunities and threats that exist in the firm's environment. Organizations should contemplate each section and generate ideas on how to capitalize each factor. The first SO strategy is to continue developing electric vehicles to meet the demand of the automotive industry. Ford Motor Company expended $8.0 billion in engineering, research, and development expenses during 2024. These expenditures paved the way for innovation and improvement of the company's products. Continuing to improve the products and production process will aid in reducing the cost of goods and enable Ford to manufacture electric vehicles at a price below the sales price. As the demand for electric vehicles grows, Ford Motor Company should continue to develop means to produce the vehicles at a reasonable price point. Ford Motor Company has reported increased net profits in 2023 and 24. These profits are placed in retained earnings. The company reports $33 billion in retained earnings. The company also repurchased $20 million in common stock shares during 2024. Based on these figures, the company can invest its retained earnings in artificial intelligence. This investment can be employed to improve productivity in the manufacturing process. This results in a lower cost of goods required to produce automobiles. As previously discussed, Ford Motor Company has a strong position in retained earnings. Backwards integration can result in the industry's suppliers having decreased power over the company's procurement of materials. Especially in the production of electric vehicles, controlling the inputs necessary to manufacture the cars can result in lower costs and improved financial sustainability. The Boston Consulting Group matrix is used to manage a firm's portfolio. The University of Minnesota Libraries Publishing states, using the matrix requires a firm's businesses to be categorized as high or low along two dimensions, its share of market and growth rate of the industry. In the creation of this matrix, some approximations were necessary. Ford Motor Company categorizes segments by the type of vehicle and user of vehicle. For example, the Ford Pro segment includes the sale of Ford and Lincoln vehicles, service parts, accessories, and services for commercial, government, and rental company customers. Meanwhile, the Ford Blue segment is categorized as the vehicles to retail consumers. General Motors does not report revenue in a similar way. Therefore, the two Ford segments were combined to culminate in all internal combustion engine and hybrid sales. Based on the BCG matrix, the Ford Blue and Ford Pro segments are cash cows. High market share units within slow-growing industries are called cash cows. Because their industries have bleak prospects, profits from cash cows should not be invested back into cash cows, but rather diverted to more promising businesses. Ford has a strong position in these segments and should divert excess revenue from these segments to fund the Ford Model E segment. The Ford Credit segment is a wide variety of automotive financing products to and through automotive dealers throughout the world. This segment is categorized as a star due to the high market share and relative high growth expected. However, it is important to note that this segment is dependent on the performance of other segments. If fewer units are sold, fewer financing opportunities will be available to the company. The University of Minnesota Libraries Publishing also states, Low market share units within fast-growing industries are called question marks. Executives must decide whether to build into these units or divest them. While it appears Ford is lacking in the electric vehicle market, the previous note pertaining to approximations should be considered. Ford Motor Company may have a larger share in this section than reported. Furthermore, the expected growth of the segment could propel the company into the future. The company should continue to invest capital into the division and work to secure a higher market share. The industry average values were calculated by averaging Ford Motor Company's 2022 through 2024 and General Motors 2024 financial ratios. This method allows the proper comparison of Ford Motor Company's financial performance to competitors within the industry. Also, the economic performance of multiple years is factored into the values. Furthermore, it should be noted that Ford Motor Company's compound annual growth rate is reported as a negative value due to the company reporting a net loss in the fiscal year 2022. Operating profit margins report that the margin on sales after subtracting operating costs like cost of goods sold. Ford Motor Company posted a 2.82% operating profit margin in 2024, which is significantly less than the industry average. This is likely due to the continual deficit experience in Ford Motor E segment. Net profit margin compares the company's net profit to revenue. Ford Motor Company reported a net profit margin of 3.18%, which means for every $100 of sales, the company received $3.18 in profit. This figure is higher than the industry average, suggesting that non-operating expenditures are far less than any of the industry's competitors. To recap, Ford Motor Company is a large name in the automotive industry. The company is attempting to break into the electric vehicle market and faces heavy competition from General Motors and other major automotive manufacturers. The company has faced serious losses in the Ford Model E segment, which produces the electric vehicles. But the industry demand for electric vehicles means that the segment is a question mark. Ford has already invested mass amounts of resources into this segment. It is clear that Ford Motor Company's cost of sales is higher than the industry average. This results in the company receiving less profit from the sale of vehicles. The reasoning behind this is the Ford Model E segment's loss in sales. However, the company's strong performance in areas outside of labor and material costs resulted in less expenditures being reported. Ford Motor Company's operating profit margin is lower than the industry average, but its net profit margin is greater than the industry average. This demonstrates that Ford's practices result in significant cost reductions. One suggestion was to invest retained earnings into vertical integration to negate the supplier's influence over the pricing of inputs. Ford Motor Company reported $33,740 million in retained earnings at the end of fiscal year 2024. This equity is the historical profits earned by the company minus any dividends it paid in the past. This money should be invested to decrease the supplier's control over the pricing negotiations with the company. The end goal of this move is to create less pressure on Ford Motor Company to pay for outside inputs. Ford would have the ability to produce raw materials in-house. The cost of materials would decrease and margins would increase. This would result in the company's operating margins increasing and being nearer to the industry averages. The second recommendation is to invest retained earnings in the production facilities of the Ford Model E section. This section of Ford's operations is bleeding money away from the entity. However, the forecasted demand for electric vehicles means that Ford must develop an efficient process for manufacturing these vehicles. This includes the whole value chain, which ties into the previous recommendation. Procuring artificial intelligence to improve the production process of electric vehicles has the ability to decrease the material and labor costs of the section. Therefore, the cost of goods sold would be decreased, and the margins would be increased. Here is a list of sources used for this presentation. Here are two additional sources used.